Alright, and in this lesson, we're going to work on some practice questions. Heads up that the practice questions in this lesson will look innocent. Most questions are 7 words or less, but as you begin to think through a solution, you'll realize that they aren't as easy as they look. Keep this in mind, that even unassuming questions can turn out to be really hard. You'll get these sorts of questions when you become a data scientist. Sometimes you'll be the one asking these questions. As usual, I recommend navigating to Data Hub, opening up a notebook, especially for this practice lesson. Once you open up a notebook, start off by loading the extension SQL and then connecting to a database in memory. And note, we're going to be using this case clause quite often inside of these practice questions. So case operates like a switch statement, allowing you to rename values based on predicates or conditions. So this is not just repetification, as we'll see later, and here's an example of what I mean. So let's say that we have an age column. The age column is some random, continuous value from 0 to whatever. And this case allows us to replace the age with a more readable string. So for anyone that's older than 18, we name them an adult. For anyone that's between 12 and 18, it's a teen, so on and so forth. And finally, we can name this entire case, the output of this case, as category. This renaming or this alias is only allowed in select. So we can't do this if we're ordering by, grouping by, or in any other clause using this case. All right, so this as alias only works with select. All right, so these are the pairs of tables that we're going to be working with throughout this practice. So I recommend creating these in SQL now. So pause the video, give it a shot. All right, and there we go. We have all of our tables created. Notice here that for parent ID, I left out the not null constraint because we do have null values here. All right, let's get started. So let's start off with some queries. For each dog, report name and lifespan. Pause the video here, give it a try. All right, and here's the solution. So what we're gonna do is join the two tables by connecting the dog's breed ID with the table breed column ID. So let's do that now. We're gonna SQL select dog.name, breed.lifespan. You don't actually need these because name and lifespan. So you need dog.name, but you don't need the breed.lifespan. You can just have lifespan. From dog, join breed on dog breed ID equals breed.id. And again, you don't need the dog dot just because breed ID column is unique. I've included all of these table names as prefixes just to be extra clear. All right, and there we go. Next question, so report each dog's parent's name. You can exclude any dogs that don't have a parent. Pause the video and try this out. And here's the solution. So we're going to actually select each dog's parent and then report that parent's name. So here we have from dog as child, join on the table itself as parent, and then the on predicate here allows us to connect every child with a parent. Finally, at the very top in the select statement, we ensure that we report both the child name and the parent's name. So let's try that out now. And there we go. We have the 3 child dogs, Charlie, Maya, and Dixie, and their parent, which is Apricot. All right, for the next question, report the number of dogs per breed. Pause the video and try this out. All right, and here's the answer. So conceptually, what we're gonna do is group by breed after joining both of these tables. So here, notice that you need a left join though. We need to report all breeds, even breeds with 0 dogs. So let's go ahead and give this a shot. We're going to select breed.name, and we need to count the number of dogs per breed, from breed, and left join dog because we want all breeds, even those that don't have a dog, on dog.breedid equals to breed ID. Group by, we're gonna group by the breed. And I forgot my cell magic. There we go. So we have the breed and the number of dogs corresponding to that breed. Notice something wrong here though. Bulldog has no corresponding dogs and yet it reports 1. So can you figure out what's wrong and how do you fix it? Pause the video here, give it a shot. All right, so now let's try fixing this query. the secret, or I guess the insight here, is that the aggregates actually don't include any null values. So we're going to pass in a column here that has null values. So this would allow us to exclude any column that does not actually have a dog. So here we're going to write, or any row that does not actually have a dog. So here we're going to change this from count star to count dog.name. And you'll see here that now bulldog is 0. For our next session, we're now going to cover some advanced queries. So these are a little bit more difficult, maybe a lot more difficult. Let's talk about reporting the average height for each breed's children. You can assume that there are no grandparents, so there's only one level of hierarchy to consider. You just need to connect parents with their kids. All right, pause the video here and give it a shot. All right, and here's the answer. So conceptually, there are two different things that you need to join on. You need to connect every child with the parent, and you need to connect all dogs with their breeds. So let's consider both of those joins now. All right. On the right-hand side, we're going to create a new query, and then we're going to select. For now, let's ignore what we're selecting. We're going to select from breed. We're going to join with the dog table as child. So first, we're going to connect these. We're going to connect the breed ID to the breed table's ID. And then we're going to join with the dog again, but as parent. So this will allow us to select all parents for each child on child.parentID equals to parent.id. And then finally, our question asks to report average height for each breed's children. So now that we've selected all parents and their breed along with the dog, let's answer the final part of this question. We're going to group by the breed, and then we're going to report the average height of the dog, of the children dog, child dog, and then breed.name of the puppy, I guess, is what I should have said. Well, let's go and run this query, and here we go. We have the average height for each breed. So we'll notice that bulldog doesn't actually have any, so it's excluded from these results. We have corgis, we have huskies, and the Bernese mountain dog, Maxie, here doesn't have a parent, so he's also excluded from the results, and that makes sense. All right, so let's talk about the next question. We want to report all possible playmates. A playmate or a pair of playmates are considered compatible if they're the same breed and they're within 1 inch height of each other. Make sure that you don't double count pairs. Let's give this a shot. All right, so for the solution, we're going to write a single join query that actually combines the dog table with itself. Instead of combining puppies and parents, we're going to combine the playmates. So take dog, and let's alias it to dog1. We're going to ensure that dog1 and dog2 are the same breed and that they're within 1 inch height of each other. We're going to make sure to not double count rows, or not double count pairs, but we'll deal with that at the end. So starting off, we're going to first make sure that we can select all pairs of playmates. So select, and we're going to report both dog names. And then from dog as dog1, join dog as dog2, and make sure that these conditions are satisfied. First condition is that the breeds are the same. So dog1 breed ID is equal to dog2 breed ID. And notice that we didn't have to actually join on the breed table and then make sure the breed names matched. We can just check that the breed IDs are the same. And then we can check the second part of this, which is that they're within 1 inch height of each other. So check the absolute difference in height is less than or equal to 1. Now let's try this query. I'm going to insert my SQL magic here, and we have a bunch of pairs, but notice that there's double counting, right? So in fact, we have Dixie is with itself or with herself, and Charlie is with himself, Apricot's with herself. So we need to both ensure that you don't match a dog with him or herself, and you also don't want to double count any of these pairs. So what we're going to do is one filter here that handles both dog ID is greater than dog2 ID, right? And this actually just reduces it down to one possible pair of playmates, which is Dixie and Charlie. All right, for the next question, let's now report the average height per dog family. Pause the video here, give it a shot. All right, and now here's the solution. So you may be tempted to use a subquery or a common table expression. If you did, that's fine, but you can also write a much simpler solution for this. We just need the group by statement. So here, what we're gonna do is actually compute the family ID for each dog. And the family ID is either the dog's own ID, if the dog is a parent, and otherwise it's the parent's ID if the dog has a parent. Once we've computed this family ID, which you see in the case statement on the left here, we're going to use that family ID to group by, and then finally we'll be able to compute the average dog height for each family. So this gives us a shot. We're going to first do this case statement. So when the dog is a parent themselves, then you would write dog.id. Otherwise, you would use the dog's parent ID as their family ID. And finally, we report this as the family ID. Once you've got that, then make sure to group by that family ID. And finally, we're going to report what the question asks for, which is the average dog height. And I'm going to include my SQL cell magic. And here we actually have, oh, I always forget this comma. Right after the average, here, this needs a comma. And there we go. We have the average dog height. Let's move on to the next question. So report the parent name per dog family. Pause the video and try this now. All right, and now let's talk about the solution. So the parent name per dog family, this actually takes, doesn't require subqueries or common table expansions once more. Instead, all you need to do is look for the dogs that have a parent ID of null, because that means they are the parent. So let's give it a shot. We're going to try the following. So select name from dog where parent ID is null. And there we go. We have both Apricot and Maxie. And there is a subtlety here, which is technically speaking, Maxie is not a parent because there are no kids associated with them. So what we can do instead is filter by the dogs that actually have references to them in the parent ID column. One way to do this is to join all the puppies with the parents, just like we did before, except this time we're going to group by the parent ID. Okay, so let's try that. We're going to right here select parent.name from dog as child, join dog as parent on dog.parent, child.parent ID equals to parent ID, right? So this will actually select all the parents. And once you've done that, we're going to now group by the parent ID. And there we go. We only have Apricot as expected. Next question, we're going to report the average height and parent name per dog family. So this is combining the previous two questions. Pause the video here and give it a shot. So for the solution for this question, we're going to start off with one of the previous results. One of the previous queries that we ran was this one right here, where we actually computed the average dog height for each family. So let's start from that one. We're going to paste that down below. So what we need to now do additionally is report the parent's name. So we're going to actually take this and join on the dog table once more as parent on dog.parent ID is equal to parent.id. Once you've got that, then we can report the parent's name. And there we go. We have the average dog height and the parent's name. All right, now for the last section of this practice lesson, we're going to practice debugging queries. Starting off with this question, report the number of dogs per lifespan. What is wrong with the following query? Take a second to look at this. Pause the video if you need to try and figure out what's wrong. All right, now the first step of this, figuring out what's wrong. There's actually a syntax error. This is the error that we get. Pause the video again to figure out if you can figure out the error now. And now the error is simply that we have an extra comma right here. So this is the reverse of what I had previously. In a lot of the demos right here, I actually was missing a comma. Here we've got an extra comma. And if you remove that, you'll get the answer. So let me try typing that out right here on the right-hand side. So we're going to select lifespan count and no comma from breed join dog on dog breed ID equals to breed.id group by lifespan. And there we go. Awesome. So the next question, report all dogs with names that start with two randomly selected letters. What's wrong? So here, to be specific, we're looking at A, M, C, D. We're going to pick two of these letters randomly, and then we're going to report all dogs with the two letters that we pick. So this is the query that we have. First, by looking at this, can you figure out what's wrong with it? It runs, so there's no syntax error this time, but there's a conceptual mistake here. Pause the video and give it a shot. Okay, all right, so the problem with this query is the following. If you pick C and M, let's say, then the dog Maya will be missing. Why is that? Again, pause the video so you can figure it out. All right, and the answer is that this does not select all dogs from each sampled letter. So let's try fixing that. Here is the next version of this attempt. Here's the query. Now, can you figure out what's wrong with this query? Pause the video and give it a shot. All right, so this query has a different kind of mistake. What you'll find is that the second letter is sometimes missing. You notice here that it looks like we've only sampled one letter and picked all dogs from that one letter. So what do you think is wrong here? Again, pause the video, see if you can take a guess. All right, and here's the answer. So the common table expression up top, the letter right here, it samples 2 random rows instead of 2 random letters. So once it selects 2 random rows and selects the first letter of the name, it may select both M's. It may select Maxi and Maya, and if it does that, then it'll select M twice effectively, right? So that's how we end up with this just Maxi and Maya. It looks like we only sampled 1 letter instead of 2. So the answer here is to actually select 2 distinct letters. And that's the answer right here. We actually need to select 2 distinct letters. So let's try this query right now. All right, and there we go. You notice that here we have both M and D selected, so we don't fall into the same trap that we did before, where selecting an M might end up with just the letter M. All right, now for the last debug question, the last question of this lesson in general. Okay, I lied. That's not the last question. This is the last, one of the last questions. We're going to report the tallest dog height for 2 random breeds. What is wrong with the following query? All right, and here's the answer. So what happens is if you run this query a few times, you notice that sometimes only 1 breed is returned. Now, can you figure out why? Again, pause the video and see if you can figure out why. All right, and here's the answer. The answer is that sometimes the query will actually pick the bulldog. So it'll sample 2 random breeds. One of the breeds will be bulldog, and bulldog doesn't have any dogs. So that's why this looks like it's only sampling 1 breed in this particular example because the other breed has no dogs. So how do we fix this? Take a moment and try to write out the query. All right, and here is the answer on the left-hand side. We're gonna go ahead and write this query and explain it as we go. So we're gonna start with this common table expression. Inside this common table expression, we're going to join the breed and the dog. We're going to group by all the breed IDs and then select a random 2 breeds. Now, so the solution here was to join the breed and the dog tables with an inner join so that we filter out any breed that doesn't have a dog. And you can see that it selects 2 random breeds and it will never pick, the bulldog. You also notice that capitalization doesn't actually matter here. All right, so now let's do the second part of this problem. Now that we've got the breeds and we've filtered by breeds that don't have any dogs, we're going to report the tallest dog height for the 2 breeds. So we're gonna select, actually first, we're gonna select all the dogs that belong to one of these breeds. So we're gonna join on sample breed where dog.breed ID is equal to sample breed ID. Once you've done that, we're now gonna group by the breed. And then for each group, we're going to report the maximum dog height. And then just so that we can check our results, we're going to report the dog name and the breed name. And there we go. We have Maxi and Maya for the Bernese and Husky breeds, and they are indeed the tallest ones of those 2. Let's see if we can get a Corgi in here. All right, there we go. And the tallest Corgi is in fact Apricot. So this is what we talked about earlier. The common table expression sometimes picks bulldog. Now the next question is, can we simplify this query? Again, pause the video and see if you can simplify. And here's the answer. We in fact can simplify a ton. We don't need this common table expression. So let's go ahead and try this expression down here. We're just gonna group by the breed, and then for each breed, we're gonna report the tallest dog height. So let's give this a shot. So SQL select breeds, and there we go. So the reason why this works is because we only need to compute a single aggregated statistic for each group. If we needed to report multiple dogs per group, then this wouldn't work. If we needed to report multiple, so some of the previous examples there, then we wouldn't be able to do this. This is only because we just needed one aggregated statistic from each one of these groups. All right, and that's it for this lesson. Let's talk about the takeaway. So the takeaway is to get familiar with SQL joins so you know what questions you can answer and how to do it. Remember that especially with all the extra tools that we've learned, subqueries and common table expressions, simpler is better. And that's it.